see who ends up hopping in on here. See who hops in first. What's up, Blake? How you doing? Got a few things to show y'all during this live stream. A couple of things I changed in the shop. We're heating up a piece of 5160 right now. We got some Willys Jeep leaf spring material in the forge. Warming up so we can start forging it. We're going to forge a knife because why not? You know? I figured it would be a perfect time to forge something and show y'all some of the stuff right now. We're kind of at a different angle from where the live stream being filmed from because of something that happened with my other shop. Yeah, I'll be at Blade Show Atlanta. Now, I'm going to be there as a just to be there. I'm not going to have a table at Blade Atlanta. I have a table at Blade Show Texas that is with one of my friends, just like I did last year. So the table's going to be under Summit and Sea Smithing, and I'll be at that table. I'm going to give you all the number and all that stuff for anybody who wants to come by and actually look at the stuff in person. But yeah, I'll be. What's up, Crab? What's up, Ron? I'll be at Blade Atlanta. I'll be bringing a case full of blades and everything like that so people can see the stuff, but I'll just be there as a spectator like I normally am. So, heck yeah. Where you at, Clint? You just Southeast Texas? Heck yeah. That's so a lot of my family, they live down in Tyler, Longview and all that. So, yeah. My pronouns are bladesmith, by the way. We've got a piece of 5160 in the forge right now. It's Willys Jeep leaf spring. I know where Kuntz is. So when it comes down to it, yeah, my family, they live down in Tyler, Longview, you know, my dad's actually in Diana and all that, but well, it's nice to have you here. Is that does it go by said? Is it said? Or is it pronounced different than that? So I'm gonna make kind of like an EDC hunter blade. We're not starting with the really small pieces still. We're starting with like a normal size piece of 5160, so it could turn into it's going to be a full size blade. It's not going to be anything like super tiny, but we're not making like a sword today. There are a couple of things that are going on right now, like where y'all are actually sitting right now is actually the doorway going into my other shop. So something to show y'all real quick, if I back y'all up, y'all are in the 12 by 12. The shop that's my other shop's connected to. So already got the workbench built in here. I just need to put the top on it and clear out some of this. I've been using it for storage, but yeah, this is the first time that these two shops have been connected. Now I can actually use the whole space, which is absolutely awesome. I can actually easily just go back and forth. I mean, that increased my shop by a 12 by 12. So, absolutely awesome. I've been kind of just using it as storage for a while. So now that's all set up. Plus, I have on the workbench over here, my 2x72, but I actually brought the 2x42 out to play, so I have that on this workbench now. I did a leather platen on it. This is primarily going to be used for sharpening and things like that. But I have that all set up on here. And it's hooked up and running. And then I have the knife vise here, the TR Maker knife vise. Plus a cool package I'm going to show y'all here in just a minute. But yeah, before we start going too crazy with showing stuff, let's forge. So we're going to start off forging in the tip of this blade. I'm going to start off with the old dog head hammer from Two Bastards. I'll probably end up using that for most of this, and then I'll end up switching to a few other hammers as we go. Y'all don't know this, I use a lot of these. All my hammers are all right there. I got a whole bunch of them. But this is from Two Bastards right here. We're going to start forging in the tip of this blade. I've been using two different types of tongs. A set of tongs to kind of get the blade out a little bit, and then the set of tongs that I'm going to hold it with. I've made these tongs just for working with this leaf spring material. But I got to forge in the tip a little bit. Just to kind of work that tip down. Now I always cut my steel with about a 45-degree angle. So all I have to do is just work that tip down, make it a lot easier. Let me change the chat filter to all messages. Nice. And boop. You have been taken off of there, my guy. I know eventually a couple of my moderators will get on here and they'll be able to eliminate a lot of the random stuff that happens. Just know that if you start posting random crap, you get the boot. So eventually, if they keep doing that show, I want to try and get on there and try it. What's up, Jeff? How you doing? So as we start forging, and a few of the people hop on here, I'll show them some of this stuff as well. Now, that's heating back up. We're forging a knife out of 5160 right now. But, let me see what my powder needs here. All I heard was a dad. So, I got a little package here from one of my friends, and the guy that actually made my power hammer, that thing right there. Style knife you're going to do today, I don't know exactly. I'm just going to kind of start forging and make something like, you know, EDC Hunter-ish. But I've got a cool piece of like fossil Damascus that was sent by Steve Jennings. So there's a whole bunch of different chunks of Damascus inside here. You can see why they call it fossil. It's just like little pieces here and there. Different types of Damascus. He sent me a big old nice thick bar of this. I'm going to end up making that into a cool blade at some point. But like I said, he's the guy that made my power hammer. And I probably talked to him the most out of all of y'all. That guy is as close to and apprentice that I actually have. Alright, so we should be hot enough to start going again. We're just going to keep working that blade down to where I want it, and then go from there. By the blade, I just mean the tip of it. Keep bringing that down as we go. So I'm betting right now I can easily go ahead and start forging in roughly where our handle's going to be. So I'm going to flip this around, kind of get an idea of how big of a handle I want. Put a little notch in here. All I do is I put a little notch right there, knowing that from here forward is going to be my cutting edge, from here back is going to be my handle. I'm giving myself about 2 inches of steel because this is about 2 inches tall. So I'm going to give myself 2 inches by 2 inches to actually work with here. And what that's going to do, that's going to give me all the steel that I need to be able to make a handle. Now, let's say I didn't give myself enough steel. All I've got to do is forge in a distal taper, and that'll give me extra length. But 2 inch by 2 inch is plenty to be able to make a handle with. So, yep. I think that piece of steel is going to be absolutely epic. I think it's going to look cool. So I'm going to end up forging that blade. So instead of doing a stock removal, I'm going to forge it, and it's going to compress that fossil Damascus into like cool little spots and everything throughout the blade, because I'm going to end up forging out a tip, the tang, all of that stuff, and it's going to make it look cool. I probably won't forge bevels in on that because I want to be able to grind through the layers of the Damascus, but it's going to be cool. Now, we already have a little bit of heat into the piece of steel, so it's only going to take a little bit of time to heat up between the cycle now. But for now, I could actually go ahead and switch to my bladesmithing tongs and my box jaw tongs. These guys right here. That's going to let me hold the blade itself, the actual tip of that, and be able to forge in the handle profile. When we go in and we forge in the handle profile, what we're trying to do is get to, we've already done this step in the process. We've done this step, forge the blade, the preform on the blade side, and the little notch. That's where we're at on this one. We need to get to this step right here. We need to forge in this transition point, which will then let us get to that step. So right now, we're about to start forging that transition point. Compress that area for where your index finger is going to go. We're hot enough to start that process. So the key for this is whenever we start forging this step, we need what's going to be the heel of the knife, or the bottom of the blade, this section right here. We need that section right there to be hanging off of the anvil. We don't want that to be up here on top of the anvil We want it hanging off of the anvil so that when we forge and we compress this section right here, we don't accidentally compress any of the height of the blade. So all that needs to be hanging off the side. Come in here, hang what's going to be the edge off the side. Come in, start making sure that you're in the same spot each time you hit it until you build up a little notch. Lay it down just to flatten it. I'm not trying to smooth anything. All I'm trying to do is keep me from creating an I-beam. But now you can see, started pushing in this area here. We're going to keep compressing that. Got plenty of material for a tang. But you want to make sure, like I said, that you hang what's going to be the cutting edge off of the anvil so you don't decrease the height here as much as too much. We want to make sure we flatten it as we go. We're not trying to make the blade look perfect as we go. We just don't want to create an I-beam effect. As I'm forging on the spine here, and this side's on the anvil, the two areas that are hitting or moving the most is, you see this little 1/4 of an inch flat spot right here on the edge? What that does, that section right there mushrooms out and turns into kind of like an I-beam. If you take that and fold it on its side after you did too much of that, you'll fold it over onto the side of the blade and create a cold shut. On that cold shut, if that's on there, you'll end up creating an area that will delaminate, an area that will pop off once you start cleaning everything up, and then you'll end up with this ugly wavy spot on the flat sides of your blade. So you're only laying it down enough to just push that back in and then go on. Okay? What's up, Curtis? How you doing? So when it comes to the shop right now, like I was showing people earlier, I actually have y'all inside of my 12 by 12. So my other shop that was completely separated, I took a section of the wall down. Now the two shops are combined. So this is only going to take about 45 seconds to a minute to heat back up. We'll keep forging, keep compressing that down. Like I said, we're working on this step right here in the knife forging process, pulling this down, and then we'll start working on the back section and really get our handle profile. The way that I do this is something that a lot of people can do. This doesn't really it takes enough skill to be able to swing a hammer and aim and hit the thing that you're trying to hit. But when it comes down to it, being able to forge like this gets you a blade that looks like this. So everything that I'm about to do right now gets you to something like that right there. Nice handle profile. Now, I don't know if I'm going to make this exact blade profile, but I am going to have a handle profile similar to that one right there. Makes for a good hunting knife, camp knife, things like that. So what we're doing right now is we're just going through what we call the preform phase. Getting everything in the area that it needs to be so that we can then finish it. All right. Let's keep it going. Keep off that edge. Flat. 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 We're going to keep it going as we create that handle. Whenever it starts cooling down, just go ahead, switch back to the forge, put it back in there. I'm going to go ahead, switch up hammers just a little bit, go with a slightly heavier hammer while I'm doing this particular phase. So the previous hammer was the Doghead by Two Bastards, Texas Smithy & Supply. This one is actually by Fire Creek Forge. He's got a channel on here. You look up Fire Creek Forge, it's Elijah over there. He makes a bunch of really cool knives. And of course hammers and tomahawks and hatchets and stuff like that. This is going to be warmed back up here in just a couple of seconds. And we'll be able to get the forging again. Once this still starts losing its heat, just put it back in the forge, let it heat back up, keep going. Just like that, right there. You remember the little section that we were trying to get to? That right there. Bring that down. We'll heat it back up. And then we'll go ahead and start doing the back side of the handle, the butt of it, the pommel, things like that. Now, I like using this hammer for some of these because it has a massive face on it. So whenever I'm hitting on different areas where I need to cover the broadest section of the steel possible, I'll use this. Now, my Doghead has a pretty big face on it, but this one has a little bit larger. And it being almost 5 pounds, really moves steel. The funny thing is, I swing a 5-pound hammer, which most of y'all would have sledgehammers, about 5 pounds, one-handed. All you gotta do is swing a hammer for a long time. You'll get used to it. Some of y'all who build houses and are used to using framing hammers will wonder why I'm holding the hammer all the way up here and not down here like you would with the regular hammer. With a blacksmithing hammer, you tend to choke up on it a little bit more. That's what we're going to do there, as opposed to swinging it like a framing hammer. It's not a framing hammer, it's a blacksmithing hammer. So now we're going to hang the back end off the anvil. Come in. Create another little notch. So, create another notch here, and this is going to be that preform for the handle. What's up, Bretta? How you doing? Nice to have you here. Let's see here. Appreciate you doing these videos. Heck yeah, short spears are awesome. I forged a couple of short spears. Now, of course, when it comes to like short spears, there's that guy right there. That's a forged to finish short spear. That's fun. That has the bevels forged into it. You can see the medial ridge all the way down the center there. It is fun doing stuff like that. So this is going to heat back up. We're going to continue forging the handle on it. Where we're at right now is working on this phase in the knife. So we're getting this area defined for that preform. And then we'll be able to kind of go from there. We want to get the handle to this point before we start working on the blade section. That way all the abuse that happens to the steel right here is already done. Then we can go ahead and abuse the heck out of the steel up here, get that where it needs to go, and then just kind of fine tune the handle section. The cool thing about this is you don't have to make something that looks like a knife the entire time you're forging it. We're just kind of getting preforms where they need to be. Getting the bulk of that steel moved from a rectangle into a rough knife profile. So now we have our initial preform for our handle. Now, of course, this is too short to be a handle. I know that because this step down section of my anvil is the same width of my hand. So I'm about 3/4 of an inch too short right now. But as I go through and work on the form of this, we'll get that 3/4 of an inch in length. But all we did there was some simple, just paying attention to where we have the steel on the anvil so that we can actually maximize what's happening as we're forging it. So we do this step, get that preform on our blade, put our notch, take that notch, forge it all the way in to this section here, which is going to be where your index finger goes on the blade. And then do a notch, forge that in. That creates this profile right here. That gives us the swell where your fingers wrap around and hooks in there. That gives us that preform. And then that lets us kind of define this a little bit more. Then we can start forging our blade, and then we'll refine this to be able to get to something like this that's fully forged, bevels forged, and handle. So we just go through the steps with preforms to be able to accomplish the end result. What are y'all saying here? That's awesome. Anybody who's doing blacksmithing and bladesmithing, I'm just happy that y'all are doing this particular craft. Some of the reasons why people would make spears is absolutely awesome. I am not condoning that you actually go spear hunting your neighbor's pets though. So now we'll refine this profile a little bit on the handle. The handle's still thicker than the rest of the knife too. So whenever I go through and actually thin that out, I'm going to thin it out with what we call a straight peen, which is basically got a little tip like that on there. That's going to do it's going to let me narrow it down by creating length instead of opening it up in a 360-degree circle. It's only going to go two directions, out that way and out this way. we're doing that particular process is we're creating a whole bunch of lines going this way. And what that does is that creates a lot of peaks and valleys. It creates a lot of peaks and valleys. So then we end up forcing all of the peaks, boom, back down into the steel. And because they're just going one direction like this, when we squish them, they only go this way or this way. And then you get length as opposed to height. We're doing pretty good there. Need to bring that down just a little bit more. I'm not going to do too much in this particular phase of this because I'll really refine the profile of the handle once we get the blade to where it needs to go. The whole point behind this is just getting the sections done as we go so that all of the main abuse or movement in the steel is defined in its own little zone. Because if I was to focus on forging the blade at this step, so if I started forging in bevels and I was at this step, whenever I go in and hold it from this side and the blade is nice and finished and I start moving all this material here, it's going to really move around everything that's happening over here. So you want to do the initial crunching in this section, which is forging in that preform, and then do all the crunching in this section and get the bulk of it really where it needs to be. And then all you got to do is just fine tune by forging in bevels and profiling, and then fine tune by getting that handle profile nice and perfect. If you try and forge everything all at once, you'll really screw up each section as you go. Do you have a finished knife? I want to see a finished version look like. So, I wouldn't say like fully finished. This isn't what the knife's going to look like, but kind of something in this realm right here. This is one of my camp knives. But I don't have a ton of the finished knives in here. Those all go inside. A lot of my knives are out here in the process of being made into full knives. Yes, the whole point behind forging this way is to save that time. There's a lot of things you can do to make your life a lot easier. All right, now we have the handle roughly where I want it lengthwise. Now we're going to leave it exactly where it's at right now because we'll finalize that profile once I get the blade done. But like I say, right now, let's say you left the blade or the handle profile exactly like it is right now. The cool thing about this is you've saved a ton of steel by not just grinding this section away. So this full handle length right now is about 4 3/4 inches from the heel right here to the tip is about 4 3/4. It started as only 2 inches long. So I was able to get all of that length just by forging in a quick handle profile. Instead of going through and grinding that all away stock removal wise, I was able to keep all of that steel into the blade. And now I have nice preform for a knife, a nice size height for a knife. So now what we got to do that we have, now that the handle's roughly where it needs to be, start forging in that blade and really make that look awesome. First knife I did, full tang. Getting it drawn out. So are you having an issue with drawing out the actual tang? So the big thing with forging out a hidden tang knife is, I'll show you real quick because I've got a few of them. Let's grab this one. So when it comes to a hidden tang knife, this is one of my chef knives. So I'll typically do the same exact process. So this is why this process works so well. So do my preform. This is the cutting edge side here. Do the preform. Put your little notch. Take that. Turn it into this big notch. And then what you're going to do is you're only going to utilize about this much from here down for your tang. You're going to push this up into there. And you're going to have basically a triangle as opposed to a triangle with a box added to it. And you're going to take all of this section and then forge it into your tail. So just how this right here, it goes into this right here, which ends up being your tang and your tail. So you do the same process. This is all your preform. Only difference is you forge this into your tang. Just bring it nice and down just like that. You don't have to do this notch. Don't worry about that. You'll do that with your grinder or your file or something like that. But you do the same preform right here, except for you forge in your tail for your tang, and then you go in and you forge in your bevels, if you want to forge in your bevels. But it's the same process. Like I said, it gets you to this right here. This is that same thing. The only difference is instead of doing this full handle profile, I would have forged a tail, and then I would have forged in my bevels, and I would have had my knife. So that's the whole process for being able to do this style of preform. Lets you do several types of knives. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to figure out what type of knife profile I want out of this. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make, let's do, I'm going to start forging in the bevels just a little bit. Kind of see roughly what I want to do profile wise, but at this point I can kind of decide what profile I want to have happen with this blade. What I might do is let's do, what do y'all think? Buoy, kind of like a clip point, a little hybrid drop point, clip point, Nesmith style. Let's do like a hybrid drop point, clip point. Let's do that. We're gonna do that. Hybrid for sure. Thank you, Matt, for agreeing with me. I think it's going to look cool with this particular profile. We'll have a nice, cool, sculptured handle on this, and then I have a cool little hybrid drop clip. That's going to look cool. kind of like a sax, except for what I'm going to do is, so where the hybrid comes in, where's one of my sax knives? All right. So, sax knife, okay? The only difference between these two is what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it come up a little bit higher here. It is going to drop down like this, but it's going to have a little bit more belly to it. So this tip isn't going to come down as far down as this. It's going to come up just a little bit higher, have a nice little belly on it, and come up a little bit wider. Almost like a longer tipped Nesmith. So for one, I have a 8-inch concrete slab, 8-inch thick concrete slab here. So even if I'm using the power hammer, it doesn't shake the camera. So big, nice, thick concrete slab. What's up, Steve? I showed them the Damascus that you sent me. It looks cool. You can actually see the fossil part of it on camera. I'll show y'all again here in just a second. But also, y'all are actually y'all are on a completely different slab. I showed this to everybody else earlier, but y'all are actually inside of my other shop. Yeah. So one of the things that I did was I opened up part of the wall from one shop into the other shop, gave myself that extra square footage. So now my 12 by 12 is actually attached with an easy walkway to go in between them. I've been talking about doing this for a while now. So this is the best part about doing bladesmithing or doing the forging aspect of this. It's just taking a piece of steel, start forging, and then deciding what the heck you want to make while you're doing it. Let me grab one of my... If you don't have one of these little guys, make yourself one. I'll show you what I'm talking about here in just a second. So, to get stuff in and out of your forge, make a little hook. This, of course, I did like a crazy twist and all that stuff on it. Makes your life a lot easier. So, a little bit of more preform on this. What I do is I go through and I use the round side of my hammer. So you have on a rounding hammer 2 different sides, flat, round. I take that round, I go through and I forge just on the bottom half of the blade there. And that starts getting my bevels in line and it gives me that natural curve of the blade. Then we'll massage everything as we go. So the whole point behind doing, or the way that you're going to do a hybrid for this is you need to focus on your overall profile on your blade at this point. So in order to create a normal buoy or clip point, what you got to do is, I'll show y'all real quick. So the transition to go from a buoy versus just a drop point, kind of like that right there. It's going to give you that clip, this hook right here, versus a drop point like that. What's going to happen is when you're at this phase right here, that's what really changes. So because I have this curve down, that is going to give me more of a drop point. The curve of this is, in order to create this, I wouldn't make it curved. I would make it flat, like I was going to do a sax. So as opposed to it being curved like this, I have it flat like this. Then when I go in and I forge the bevels, on this one, if I forge the bevels, it's going to give me that nice sweep up in the belly, but it's going to give me a drop point. So this spine's going to come down, and then it's going to round around. If you do this and you forge in the bevels, what happens is all of this section right here creates that hook. Because this whole side is going to stretch, and it's going to pull this point up to here, and it's going to create that hook. So the preform for this is this. The preform for this is this. You want to create this? Preform has the curve. You want to create this? Preform is straight. Hopefully that is helpful. So on a hybrid, you got to do a little bit of both, okay? Now I'm using the flat side of this hammer. Going down both sides. So you'll see when you're looking at this now, I don't have that hook up. Now, this isn't exactly the profile that I want just yet. I've left a lot of extra meat in the flats right here. So I'm going to end up adjusting that profile as we go. Now, we've already got bevels starting to be forged into this process. So we're kind of good there. But what if you want a straight clip? You're going to do the hybrid like what I did here. What you're going to do is, I'll show you. One, I'll put it back in the forge so it starts heating up again. So if you want a straight clip, what you're going to end up doing is coming in here, and instead of having it fully straight like that, you're going to have a slight down curve. So you're not going to have it super crazy, but I'll tell you this, the easiest way to do it is to forge it this way, okay? If you do it this way, it's going to have that hook, all right? If you forge it with that curve right there, what you can do is, as you're forging in the blade, as you're forging in the bevels, what you're going to do, you're going to forge in the bevels, then you're going to lay it on its spine, like this right here, except for you're going to have it slightly, the blade slightly brought up just a little bit, and you're going to massage this section, and it's going to flatten this and give you that profile. So basically, you would have it where right now it has that drop. You figure out roughly where you want your swedge to start, or your clip. Put it on the anvil with it slightly raised up. Forge down on the cutting edge side, and it will start flattening this section right here, wherever you want that to be, and bringing that up. So your tip come up a little bit. You'd have that nice little swedge that you can do. So you're going to flatten this, because every time you hit on this side, the anvil is going to smooth this side. When you lay it down, clean up your bevel, go back in, lay it down, clean up your bevel, go back in until you get the swedge or the clip that you want. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch hammers, go from that bigger hammer down to my vintage restoration hammer, my two bastards. This is called a turning hammer. This is actually a farrier's hammer. It's round on this side, flat on that side. Let's make sure we're not missing anybody here. Okay, we're good. Nice. All right, let's get to forging some more. The reason why I'm using that hammer is because I'm going to start massaging the profile a little bit. It's a lot easier to use this hammer to fine tune it. Slag to my fingertip there. So what I'm massaging right now is going to be the back side here. I'm still going to work on this profile just a little bit, but we're not going to mess with that until we start working on the handle. So right now, I just want to keep those bevels forged in. I want to get that nice rounded belly on here. Keep this section kind of flat but slightly round as we go. And then what's going to end up happening is whenever I actually start moving the handle, this is going to drop down in here just a little bit. That's going to give me a little up sweep and then a dive down and a belly. So it's going to be kind of like whenever I'm fully done with it and I've done some grinding work and stuff like that, it's going to be kind of like a longer tipped Nesmuk. And I'm not wearing hearing protection. I got my hair over my ears. But my Anvil doesn't ring. So I don't have to worry about that particular part of this. So I'm going to keep forging in the bevels just a little bit more. We're going to get the blade to about 80-85% done. And then we're going to switch to the handle. Get that about 85% done, and then we'll go back to the blade, smooth everything together, call it good. But no, I don't wear hearing protection in here unless I'm using like my angle grinder. That's about the only thing loud enough to for hearing protection. So the reason why this doesn't ring, that's as loud as you get right there. Now when I'm hitting steel, it's going to be a lot deader than that. It's not going to be as pingy. But this doesn't ring because I've got a nice heavy base and I actually have a layer of silicone between my anvil and my base. So what I did was built my base, marked where my anvil was going to be, filled that area with silicone, put my anvil on top of it, strap the anvil down, let it cure, do all of its stuff. And now my anvil doesn't make any noise. It makes, so over the bulk of the anvil, that's about all you get. And whenever I'm forging a knife and I'm hitting the steel, and I have that steel in between the hammer and the anvil, it's even quieter. This doesn't really use that much. If I'm using both burners, because this is a 2-burner forge, it goes through it faster. But I'm running at about 6 psi right now, so I'm not using much fuel. This is the 4th knife that I've made with that one tank. So keep working on the profile. switching between the round side, the flat side of this hammer, just to kind of refine the bevels. And move the material to where I want it to go. I'll tell you right now, there's a lot of getting used to what your hammer does and swinging a hammer to be able to modify a profile at this point. So getting into your shop and actually doing the process is really going to help you figure out where you need to hit the steel at what point with what side of the hammer. Now, of course, if you're just trying to forge to a point to be able to do stock removal the rest of the way, you could have already stopped and been working on your knife. So basically, you could have went through, forged the preform, and then took your handle, moved it back down in line where it needed to be, and then you could grind this the rest of the way and call it good. I'm going through and I'm forging in my bevels, so I'm having to do a little bit of extra steps to that. But that is looking good. That's going to end up making a cool little drop swedge whenever I'm done with that. Nice belly to the blade. Now, of course, this profile is all out of whack right now. I grab it the other direction so you can kind of see. So for right now, my handle is not where it needs to be. This butt of this handle is going to end up being even with the heel here. So I've got to move it over to here whenever I'm all done. That's going to put a nice profile, nice arch profile to this, and you'll actually get to see where the clip starts and everything like that when we get to that point. Well, right now, we just need to do a little bit more planishing on that blade. We don't need to do too much. I'm going to do one more heat to just kind of clean up the blade a little bit. And then we're going to switch to the handle side, get that handle put where it needed to be, and then we can go ahead and planish everything together and create a full profile. What kind? We are making a hybrid between a drop point and a clip point. So not exactly a set. So we're not making this, and we're not making this, and we're not making this. We're creating a little hybrid of them. So we're not doing a clip point like that. We're not making a full-blown sax like that. Imagine we're just kind of adding these two together a little bit, and it's going to be a cool little profile, full tang knife. Nice. I mean, I would carry it like an EDC because I carry bigger knives typically, but you would really be able to use this as like a hunting or a camp knife, something like that. So I think it's going to be a cool overall profile. It's going to be a useful knife. It's going to be something that has a little bit pointier of a tip, but still has a decent amount of meat behind that. So when it comes to doing finer work, actually drilling a hole into a piece of wood or something like that, but still having the usefulness of just a nice overall knife, I think it's going to be a cool little hybrid. And I like making hybrid knives. I like making different versions of knives. To give you an idea, this is, I've got one in my knife vise right now. So this profile right here is one like what they were talking about earlier, where they wanted the swedge to be straight. So this, from the tip to where the swedge ends, that is actually straight. And then you have the belly, and then you have your swedge ground into it. Now, of course, this one right here is made out of a Gomai billet that I made on a live stream. So it's ladder Damascus on the edge, 15N20, and then 1084 on there. So that's a cool knife. But like I said, this has a straight clip on it. And that turned out really cool. It's going to be a little fighter style. It's going to have a guard on it. Cool faceted handle, stuff like that. Put that back in the knife vise. Make my own handles. I do all my own handle stuff, yes. So I don't like stabilize my own wood, but I do all the handle work for all of these myself. Design them, do all of that. Now, because we're trying to planish and keep everything nice and even as we do this step, we don't want it to be super glowing hot. When we start forging it, we want it to be a little bit cooler than that. Trying to keep everything even without massive hammer strikes. This is something you really want to focus on if you're doing like a forge to finish knife. Forging it all the way into a lower heat. We're really just smoothing, getting things lined up to how I want it before I go through and finalize it. So that's all looking good. Now I'm going to go ahead and switch it to the other side. We're going to correct the overall profile. So now we need to modify the actual profile. There's a big difference between a metalsmith and a bladesmith, just so you know that. And if you can't explain what the correct way is, all you're doing is just using words and making me assume what you mean by that. So unless you want to go through and say, hey, this is the reason why you're doing it wrong, all you did was just make a statement. You didn't help me learn. So Sean, explain what you mean. What inspired you to get into blacksmithing? I would say forged in fire, but that's not actually accurate. My friend Jeff Peters got me into wanting to do this, and then he actually went on Forged in Fire after that, and then I got into doing it because I saw what he was using in his smaller shop and was able to do it. And by the way, just so you know, before you start saying stuff, I have forged over 1,000 knives. And my technique for the hammering is not wrong. Unless you forged 1,000 knives, I am correct. And I'm not trying to be a jerk or anything like that. I know you're not trying to be a jerk. You're just trying to educate. But the way that I forge my knives is probably one of the easier ways. I've seen a lot of people go through. As soon as you add it in, you forge 10,000 knives in the pits of hell. I figured you were joking. Let's see here. Thank you, Sean. Bought Damascus knife from a roadside stand. So the hard part about buying Damascus knives from places like that is a lot of the times they're not made from actual good heat treatable steel. We call them gas station knives. We call them Pakistan Damascus knives. A lot of those are made from whatever steel they can get their hands on that are able to etch with two different colors on them. So ones that will etch dark, ones that will etch shiny, and they're never really going to hold an edge. The hardest you can get a lot of those is about 40 Rockwell 40 HRC. And whenever you go through and you do that, it's gonna be a pretty knife, but it's not gonna be something that's heat treatable. I'm redoing a knife for a customer right now. This is more of a sentimental knife than it is a knife that's supposed to be a good knife. And you can see it's got good, you know, you can see the two different types of steels, all of that stuff. It looks awesome. It's got a nice pattern on it. But this steel is not really hardenable. So it looks cool, but the hardest you can get this is about 40 HRC. It looks awesome, and again, it's just a sentimental knife that someone bought for her husband a long time ago, and she's had it for a long time. It's not really going to hold the edge that well, but it had a crappy handle on it that broke. It was plastic. I'm putting a nice piece of diamond wood on there and have it all nice and good looking. So it's going to be a good looking knife that she can carry, but it's not really, you know, unless you're just cutting plastic with it, it's not going to hold an edge. Huh? So let's go ahead and start working on this handle. So now what I need to do with the handle is I need to kind of change the profile. Move the anvil over. I'm going to lay this down with the spine. Just focusing on, as I'm doing this, I've got the spine on the anvil and I'm just hammering inside here and inside here. Just focusing on those two spots, and that's going to bring my heel down. That's going to start giving me the profile that I want. So now our profile has that nice arch to it, and we can really start going through and modifying the actual handle itself. So this is 5160. Specifically, it's off of a Willys Jeep leaf spring. That is what I'm using. Some of y'all might be thinking, what? You can use leaf spring to make a high quality knife? Yes, you can. Now, not all leaf springs are created equal. Some of them are not very good steel. Some of them are great steel. Some of them have a higher concentrate of vanadium and chromium in them. Some of them don't. 5160, the nice thing about it is I've got this wonderful wakizashi that I made out of the same exact steel that I use to cut branches and stuff off my tree and break down wood. And this was made out of the same exact steel. I made this about 2 years ago on the channel. It's got a 0 edge, so there is no secondary bevel. The bevels go all the way to the cutting edge. I've only ever leather stropped this. I've never resharpened it, and it still shaves hair, even after all of the abuse. And you can see all this is tree bark. That's not surface rust. That is the markings from the tree bark on there. And that bad boy still shaves hair. If y'all can see all that. Yep. So same steel. When you talk about edge retention, I only sell a few of these knives. I typically keep a lot of the ones that are made out of this specific steel because it's my steel and it comes in a very limited quantity. So trying to get your hands on original Willys Jeep leaf springs are not easy. But every once in a while I'll sell them. So now that we have that arch into there, I'll move the anvil back around a little bit, all the way to the tip of the horn right here. We'll kind of play with the profile just a little bit. There we go. What I want to do is just pull this in just a hair this way. So I'm going to push down. Push down on this section right here and forge that in. Create a nice little swoop into here. And that's going to give me a nice hook, almost like a W around your actual fingers there. And it's giving me a nice swell in this back section right here. I am going to end up smoothing this out just a little bit, but that is going to make a really cool profile. Heat that back up, and then we'll come in and we'll forge in that handle, that butt or pommel down just a little bit, create a nice sharper hook. Basically something kind of like this right here, where it hooks down in, and that way we get this kind of like W profile here. And yeah, I sell my stuff. I've got knives on the website right now, theriversexperience.com, and then I've got several knives that are about to get added to it that are really cool. But yeah, I've got that. I'm in the process of finishing a whole lot of knives to get ready for Blade Show Texas. That way I can bring, I'm hoping to bring about 30 to 35 knives. Almost, all of them are custom builds. I think all but 6 of them will be unique. So there's going to be about 24 of them that are all one-offs. Even the 6 that are similar are technically going to be one-offs because they'll all have hamones that are slightly different, and they'll all have different handle material. They're just a similar profile. Those are going to be some wicked EDCs because they are made out of 26C3. Okay, so this is kind of the preform for that hook that's going to be on there. What I'm going to do next, hang it off the edge of the anvil, we'll figure out where exactly I want it. We'll go in here. What I'm going to start doing is I'm going to create a nice well inside there. So basically this section right here is going to go kind of like this. So I'm going to be hammering here and here to push this section back up in there and create a nice even swoop. We're going to let that heat back up. Now at this point you can easily stop where I'm at right now and just grind it the rest of the way, but if you have the ability to forge it, why not? So that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to go through and create that little hook, keep all that steel as part of the knife, and then go from there. Thank you, Matt. How does the heat treat work in the finished process? Forge it. Yeah, so whenever it comes to the actual heat treating process, so whenever I get done forging, this is going to go through an annealing phase. So I'm going to bring it up to 1600 degrees and let it cool inside the forge slowly. That's going to kind of put everything into its most relaxed state, the annealing process. And then before I heat treat it, I'll go ahead, final profile it with grinding, clean up a few things, take about a 1/16 of an inch off the edge just to make sure everything is nice and straight and smooth. Unless I was doing a forge to finish knife, then at that point, whenever I get done with forging, that's what it looks like. But do a little bit of cleanup with grinding, and then go through and do a normalizing phase or a thermocycling phase where I bring it up to 1600, pull it outside of the forge, let it cool in open air. Then I bring it up to 1500, let it cool in open air, bring it up to about 1375, cool in open air, and then I'll bring it up to about 1500 to 1525 degrees, and I'll quench it. And this thing's actually blocking the big jug, but there's an ammo can right there and a big ammo can underneath it that has oil in it. I'll quench it in that oil with that oil heated up to 120 degrees. The reason why you do those grain refinement cycles is so that you have a nice grain structure on the end of it, nice silky smooth grain structure whenever you actually quench it. And then you go through and you temper it. Because whenever you get done quenching, it's super hard. You need to take some of the hardness out and make the knife tough versus brittle. And then, so you do the tempering process in your oven and get it down to the hardness that you want. Next phase in this is to go ahead and pull that back down in. So that's only going to take about another minute to heat back up, and then we'll be able to pull that back in. All right, Platesmith. It's the best liquid to quench. So Parks 50 and AAA, absolutely awesome. For some of the 5160 that I use peanut oil. You can actually heat peanut oil up to 120 degrees, and you can quench anything that is quenchable in AAA in that peanut oil that's heated up to 120 degrees. If you want to do something that's similar to Parks 50, just use diesel. Now the thing with diesel and Parks 50 is they tend to flare up, so you get big flames. All you got to do to eliminate that is dunk the whole entire blade into the quench it. Don't have any of the tang or anything like that sticking up outside of the oil to let it combust or ignite. Go all the way in, quench it, call it good. Diesel, you'll still heat up to 120 degrees, but that works very similar to Parks 50. As a matter of fact, in Brazil, they primarily use diesel to quench everything. And these are like master smith knife makers. It's always an option. Something you have to remember about watching me forge is you don't have to get as detailed as I am whenever I'm doing this, because At any point, you could go through and just grind some of this to be able to get to where you need to be. If you're trying to do the full handle profile and do all of that, then it takes a little bit of extra work. But you can have this handle profile that's nice and clean to where you barely have to do any stock removal, but it's not necessary. I could have easily stopped a few steps ago and just started grinding some of this to clean up the profile like that. I just prefer to go through and do it myself with the forging process. So looking good there, profile's looking really good. I need to go through and blend a lot of stuff together, but before I do that, I want y'all to see what the profile looks like right now. This is what we've made so far. So nice handle profile, nice blade profile, bevels forged in. We've been able to do that so far. And what's going to end up happening is whenever I go through and grind and do things like that, we're going to get that nice drop clip style section, like a longer Nesmic and all that stuff. So it's going to be a cool profile. For right now, we're looking good with where it's at. We need to go through, of course, clean up all of the profile and all that. A little bit of extra smoothing things around. We're going to heat it back up, blend everything together. Is that a deal? Adele? Idol? Ochoa. Hi, back at you. Back to hand sanding G10. You're out there hand sanding, huh? I've got to do some of that on the blade over here. So what we need to do is finalize the profile on this, finish cleaning it up. That thing's going to look absolutely awesome. By finalize the profile, I'm not saying that I need to modify. I should probably clarify what I'm saying. I'm not trying to fully modify the profile. I need to blend everything together. So blend the handle thickness up into what we call the ricasso or the flats, and then blend everything else back together. So what I mean by that is I need to go through and blend the thickness of this handle into this section that we call the ricasso, which is the section in between the handle, the wooden handle, and the actual bevels or the plunge line. So I need to blend this into the ricasso section, then blend that up into the flats, which is going to be the section that comes along the top of the knife here. That way all of that is one thickness. The point behind that is so that when you go through and you put your handle on, everything's nice and good, especially if you want to keep this texture. So handle, this is the ricasso, this flat section here. These are the flats, this texture section up here. And then you have your bevels. So I want to blend the area that's going to be this tang into this section, then that into this, so that when you're looking at the spine, you don't see a whole bunch of dents and extra stuff. So there's a full texture here, but you can't tell that that texture is there when you look down the spine. You know it's on the side, but when you look at the spine, you can see how sharp this edge looks right here by the shiny spot on the edge of it. So you want to blend all of that stuff together so that whenever you go through and you grind it and do all your stuff, everything stays even. And you spend the least amount of time possible on the grinder. doing this part with a bunch of heat in the blade. We're focusing more on planishing than anything right now. By planishing, I mean smoothing. Make sure our cutting edge is centered all the way down. Make sure our spine's nice and even all the way down. All right, give y'all some close-ups of this. So that is everything completed. What's up, Nan? Is it Nanda? Nanda? That right there, nice, clean. Our cutting edge is centered all the way down, nice and straight, all the way down. Within the amount that you would end up grinding it. Handle looks nice and even. Shadows can play with you just a little bit, but you can see right there. Might need to pull that in just a hair. Of course, that's going to end up getting ground smooth, but why not? But that is looking like a good knife right there. I like the actual spine profile of it. So coming up from here up to here, and that longer swedge with still having the nice sweep through the blade belly right there, and then the nice W for your, this is a swell for your fingers to hook into. Basically, this section of that W goes in between your middle finger and finger right there. So both these two fingers go up front, these two fingers go back. This is your index finger choil, this is your pinky finger choil. So those sit inside there. It makes it to where it gets a nice grip all the way around it. That's the whole point for that. That profile is looking absolutely awesome. And again, all forged from basically a rectangle. And if you go through and you do the steps, it's easy to go through and get this particular profile. And I think we ended, let's see how long we are. So we ended with a 9 1/8 inch long overall knife. The overall size of this is 9 1/8 inch from the butt on that. So I said it wasn't going to be a huge knife, but it's definitely not a small knife. But by doing the process, I'm going to grab these real quick and show y'all. Again, for people who haven't been here the whole time. We go through and we do a few different profiles. We go from there, where we forge in the blade preform. Then we do the little notch that separates from where the heel is going to be in the handle. And then we take that and we go to this, still preformed, notched up. And you see what I'm talking about, these are still technically the same blade profile here. Same blade profile. The only difference is we go through and we start forging this section here. That's what changes it. So we start there, we get to this step. With this step, we go ahead, forging that neck down section right there. That gets us to, so we look at it in front here, still same blade profile. Only difference is you go from there and you start forging in that actual handle profile. So you go from this to this. And if you just did those two things and then from there just forged in your bevels, you automatically have roughly a knife profile. You could easily go through and grind the rest of the handle, get it all nice and good. But if you then take that step and forge your handle the rest of the way, so you're right here, you go from that to this. And all that is taking and forging the handle just a little bit thinner, a little bit more tapers to it, getting that, and then taking and forging in your bevels, and boom, you're to this. This is what this looked like before I cleaned up the handle profile a little bit, forged in those bevels. So now that this is up to temp, I need to turn the forge off, let that start annealing. So this started out as this. This started out as this. This started out as this. And this started out as a rectangle with a little bit of an angle cut into it. And then I forged into this. Then we went to this. Then we went to this. Then we went to that knife. Just by following those simple preforms. And that lets you get to almost any of these knife profiles. So if you wanted a chef's knife profile with a hidden tang, all you do is instead of forging this into a handle profile, you would neck this down into a tail and make that. If you wanted to do this right here, all you would do is, like I said earlier, instead of starting with this preform on the blade to get to that, just a slight drop down, instead of starting with that preform, if you started with this preform, where it was a nice straight as opposed to a curve, that gives you a clip point, that hook. So that gives you that right there. It's all about the preform. It's all about what you do in the previous step to be able to get the steel to react a certain way as you're forging it. That's the whole point behind all of this, is once you do a certain preform, start forging it, it's going to automatically move the material in a specific direction. That's why all these little forms that I showed y'all are important. You can easily take those steps and turn it into whatever knife you want to make just as soon as you get used to the actual preform process. Makes life a lot easier. A lot easier. So I make all kinds of different profiles. This is one that was we did a couple of weeks ago. This is a full tang spear point that we did on the live stream. Now, of course, this is just pre-heat treat. So I've still got, whenever I finish grinding it, the shiny spot's going to come all the way back to about where this line is right here. What's up? How you doing? So this is a full tang spear point. It's going to actually be sharpened on both sides like a dagger. Of course, we forged in a fuller in there. But now this was fully forged, as in a hammer and anvil, actually out of a piece of rectangle, hammer and anvil on a, and heating it up and all that. I've got a website. It's called the riversexperience.com, just like the YouTube channel, the Rivers Experience. I have a lot of my knives posted on there. Plus, I have more as I finish them that'll be on there. If you want this specific knife, all you got to do is email me, the riversexperience@yahoo.com, and we can figure something out. But that one right there, plus pretty crazy things. I'll show y'all a couple of them. So of course, this is one that I'm also working on right now. This is a fighter knife. This is a rather large bowie that's going to have a recurve in it. The actual length of this is that long. So it is a very large knife, but that is going to have a beautiful handle profile and all of that on it. But knives like that right there, plus crazier ones where this one has dragon scales actually on the spine of it. This is an integral bolster knife, so the actual bolster up here is all one piece built into the knife. This one at this point is heat treated and tempered and all that stuff. All I got to do is finish working on the handle, which is actually taking more work than I thought it was going to be. But yeah, that one right there is a pretty crazy one. And it's looking, whenever I actually do the edge, it looks so cool. All the way to a ridiculous one. This right here. This is a huge kukri. Again, this is a large knife. And it's a baby. It is a baby compared to this knife. This thing is 3/8 of an inch thick at the ricasso. Has a distal taper. That thing, that's a huge knife. How much did you miss? Well, it's kneeling in the forge right now. What we did was we forged a kind of like a hybrid between a clip point, drop point setup. So it's gonna kind of look like a longer tipped Nesmuk whenever it's done being ground, and it's got a cool profile. You still there, Mule? Because if you're still there, I'll pull it out of the forge and I'll show you. You want to see it? You let me know if you want to see it, and I'll go ahead and pull it out of there and actually show you what it looks like. Cool. Of course, you'll actually see it on the, you'll see it cleaned up on the Discord channel. So what it looks like right now is not exactly what it's going to look like whenever I actually go through and clean it up, because I am going to round this off just a little bit. There's going to be a little dip here, but the handle profile looks awesome. So kind of like a clip, but with more of a sweep belly belly to it. But that's what we did. Nice and straight. Absolutely cool profile. Gonna go back in the forge and let it finish cooling off inside there. If you do Damascus knives, would you be able to? I mean, I just want you to understand something. Yeah, could I do that 15 layer, 13 piece Damascus set? Yes, but I mean, you're talking about, depending on the knife size, like anywhere between $500 to $650 per knife times 13. That is like, it's a lot of money. If you're down for that, I'll do it. You just email me, theriversexperience@yahoo.com. But yes, I can absolutely do that. I used to make knives about 7 years ago. Got busy. That's cool though. Whenever I first started making knives, it was just because I was a knife collector prior to making knives, and I was like, I kind of want to just start doing the process and getting used to it and all of that. So I started with stock removal, and you know, my first knives were like file knives and things like that. And then I went through, kept doing stock removal, got better tools within that process. And then I thought, I really want to start the actual bladesmithing side of it and the blacksmithing side of it. So then I started forging knives, and then I got better tools and better tools within that. And I always tell people, always start small. Don't go crazy right off the rip. Just start small. Use things that you have to make the knives and stuff like that, and then gradually get better tools. Just like I have right now. So now you can see you got things like 2x72, the Grizzly 2x42, leather platen on there just for sharpening. That's all I use that for. And then porta bandsaw, the TR Maker knife vise, which is really nice because you can actually spin this, do all kinds of stuff with it. But things like that right there. And yeah, I finally got the Grizzly out. I'm just using that original little platen thing, but I epoxied a leather strip to it, and this is going to work out really well. Got the little light on it right now. And of course the light on this one right here. Got the Fordham back there. This table's on wheels, so I can kind of roll it wherever I want to take it. And then of course, got the opening into the other shop. This is where y'all were actually hanging out at for a while. So opening to the other shop. Of course, I have the TV and all that stuff, the fridge, all my belts. And then of course you go to this side, you have all the pegboard. These are all my original knife profiles. From the first knife I ever made to all the ones as I was going through, these are all the original knife profiles. The one that a lot of people follow me for is actually right the tip of my finger right there. That's the Rivolette, or what y'all know as the heirloom knife that I made out of a file. That is that guy right there. But yeah, got that all set up. And then of course, forge, the Vevor anvil that people practice on, the power hammer, all of my other hammers, not including the ones that are all on the floor here. And of course, my vintage Trenton anvil. And then you step in here. This is the original knife shop. I, of course, changed some of the sheetrock because I opened up this doorway. The original workbench that I worked on, I got to put a new top on it. And then I'm going to put a whole bunch of other stuff in here. But I'll be using this, my bike. But yeah, everything's looking good. So it's nice having the extra space And having the 12 by 12 attached now is absolutely awesome. So we're just kind of going from there. Put y'all back on here. Your corner in your parents' garage. So originally, whenever I first started doing this, remember that this 12 by 12 that y'all are actually sitting inside of right now was my whole knife shop. The shop that was out here that had my anvil and my forge and all that was just an 11 by 11. It was barely an 11 by 11. 11 by 11 was the actual pad. So then you got to take in the account 2 by 4 walls and all of that. So the internal size of it was not 11 by 11. And so I had that, and that had the forge, the anvils, all that stuff in it. And then, of course, that got knocked down. We broke up, my wife and I, we broke up the pad, the 11 by 11 concrete pad, sledgehammered it up as much as possible. And then I had this wonderful slab that you see here poured, and I built the whole entire shop on the actual YouTube channel. The reason why I didn't film the opening and all of this stuff of this is for some reason, every single time I build something like this on the channel, that every structural engineer like tells me what I did wrong. They're probably right, but this works and it doesn't leak and everything is great on it. And it has had 6 inches of snow hanging out on the roof here. People are like, "Their slope of your roof's wrong." Well, it's worked. Do you ever do anything with traditional pocket knives? No, not really. I do want to get into making pocket knives, but you don't technically need a mill or a milling machine in order to make them. But I am going to do some frame, like some frame locks and some friction folders. Those are going to be the first 2 style of folders that I'm going to end up working on. And stuff is in the tiny space. There's about enough empty room on the floor. Yeah, that's what I like about having that shop open, because some of this stuff is going in there, and now I have all of this open space. And whenever I enclose the 8 by 16 pad that's on the outside of the shop, all the grinders and all that stuff are all going into that section. And I'm gonna put those little hanging plastic flap things to separate the 2 spaces. And I'm gonna put another set of big doors on the end of that. So that will be the whole grinding area. Grinding, and if I ever want to pull the forged anvils out there, I can, and all that stuff. But that'll be what that whole space is for. This will all be blacksmithing and bladesmithing, this whole big space right here. And it works out well. And then, of course, all the stuff that's going to happen in here. Whenever I start the podcast, my own podcast, I'm already on a podcast, the Knives Templars. If y'all aren't listening to that, you should. But I'm going to be starting my own podcast, and that is going to be done inside that, the 12 by 12 plus this shop whenever I start doing that. Now, of course, the difference between my podcast and other podcasts is whenever I actually tell you about something or I want to show y'all something, y'all are going to come up, y'all are going to get picked up, and y'all are going to come with me into the shop so I can point at the thing I'm talking about. And then we're also going to go back down to sitting. What I see a lot of people do with their podcasts is they pretty much just stay stationary for like an hour, hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours, sitting in one spot and talking about stuff, because I'm going to stream my podcast and then it's going to turn into videos. Now, whenever I stream the podcast, it's not going to be vertical like this. The podcast is going to be horizontal. Because I can actually do that with this right now. I can actually take this and have it horizontal. But a lot of people who watch this watch it on their phones and stuff like that, so it's easier like this. But whenever I do the podcast, it's going to be the other direction. It's going to be a thing that is filmed live, and then it's going to turn into a video that people can watch later. Let's see here. first live. Yes, we make knives. So the knife that we actually made for this this live stream. So if you want to go back, you can watch it, because after I finish this live stream, it turns itself into a video. But this is what we forged in this particular live stream. And I tend to forge a bunch of different knives, but this started off as a rectangle. We forged this whole entire profile with the bevels forged, so the bevels are actually forged in and all that. That is what we made during this live stream. Whew. Hot steel, do not let it burn you. We're nice and straight. All of that. It's got tapers and everything. Whew. Gotta be careful. Don't want to burn yourself. But yeah, so that's what we made during this live stream. I've just got it cooling down in the forge right now. Doing its whole annealing phase. But yeah, that's what we ended up forging today. We forge a lot of different types of knives, everything from knives to spears. I did this kind of short spear thing. We do this, we do swords, we do all kinds of different stuff. And I do them all live so you can actually watch the process. So like this right here, this is a spear, that's forged bevels and all that. Little short spear. Whenever I finish this is going to be fun to throw around. I do everything from that to integral bolster knives by hand. I do a lot of forge to finish stuff. It is absolutely a blast and fun. And thank you for subscribing. I think what we're going to do now is I am going to, let's see here. Cool to forge another knife in a different maker's design again. Yep. If y'all want, go into the Discord and pick a knife maker, and if y'all can come to an agreement on which knife maker or which knife design you want me to make from a different knife maker, we'll do that next weekend. So go on the Discord and figure that whichever knife maker y'all want me to make a knife similar to them, I will go through and I will make my version, not really my version of their knife, it would be forging as close to their version of their knife. And then if I decide to do the next weekend, my version of it, cool. But my goal is always to forge it as close to what they actually do as possible, and then go from there. Just like I did with yours. But I think we're almost at the 2-hour mark. I do want to get some more stuff done in the shop and all that stuff, but I want to go eat some food before I start messing with all of that. So I'm going to go inside, I'm going to eat some food, and then we're going to knock out some other stuff. But for now, I think I'll probably end the live stream here. What would you change on the one you did for my style? I'll actually show you what I changed. So and then once I get done showing you this, I'll probably end the live stream, but let me find the one that I did. There was the slight variation from your profile. Oh, here it is. This isn't fully done. I'm still kind of messing with the grinds a little bit to see exactly where I want it. But again, this right here is the one that I did kind of based on your profile. With the little tab and all of that. And I'm going to do swedge on it, grind, everything like that. So that was based on that one profile that I kind of followed for yours. And then the things that I changed on it, it's this right here. Was kind of a drop point style, a little bit more craziness to the actual handle sculpting. Still keeping the tab that comes down, added a little bit of a sharpening choil. But that was based on your profile, just slightly modified within mine. So like a hybrid of our two styles. So that it hooks around your pinky right there. But yeah, as you can see, I am going to bring the plunge. I don't really like the plunge being almost 90 with this particular profile, so I am going to bring that plunge back to right where this starts here. So that's going to be the thing I change. Let's see what you hear. Alaskan made. Check out or think about duplicating an Alaska made knife. I'll check that out. So is it just is it Alaska made or is it Alaskan made? Yeah, Alaskan made. Is that a maker or a company? Is that a channel on YouTube? Is it a specific maker? Not the half moon, but the fixed blades. There, sweet. Again, is it an actual specific maker? Is it a company? Okay. And I've made an ulu. I got a Damascus ulu sitting on the workbench right now. But yeah. That's the only thing I'll change. Boop, boop, boop. But I'm happy that I did this one because I really like this particular profile. And that handle is sick. I'm going to put that handle on a few different knives. And if I wouldn't have made that specific knife, I would not have designed that knife around it. And to give you an idea of how cool this knife's going to look, I am using this handle material right here. So it's a really cool like hose. It's like a green, like not like a rubber hose, like a canvas fire hose or whatever. So green and then black, orange, black. Yes, fire hose, yeah. That's what's going on this knife. I think that's going to look cool. It's just going to be a cool little unique one. But yeah. I'm trying to remember who I actually got this from. I got a few different versions of it from them. I got the package that I got it from somewhere. But yes, okay. Charles Allen is the originator of Alaska made knives. Okay, what I'll do is I'll go on there and I'll check that out. If you know the guy that makes it, it's probably the guy who did that because it's a very specific looking style to his thing. And they look sick. I've got a few of them and he sent me that and sent me a couple other materials to work with. But yes, okay, we're at 2 hours. I'm going to go eat something. It's probably True North, my card. I think that sounds about right. But it was the person's name that was on the actual package that sent it, not their like business like that. But yeah, I'm going to go inside. I'm going to eat something and then put in some more work after that. If I decide to, I might live stream again whenever I come out here to do some more stuff, but I don't know if I'm going to end up doing that. We'll figure that out when we actually figure that out. But for right now, I'm going to end it here. Y'all stop talking. Y'all are going to keep me talking, and I'm going to be talking for the next 20 minutes. Y'all are awesome. Thank y'all for talking in the chat. Thank y'all for doing what y'all do. Y'all are awesome. I'll catch y'all next weekend on the next live stream. See y'all.